All right, we are live. Welcome everybody to another DoneJS contributors meeting. I am Justin Meyer, your host with the most. Chasen isn't here. He's a little bit under the weather, and we wish him well. Today we've got a good selection of the core team. Matthew, you want to say hello?
Food in my mouth, but hello everyone.
Hey Matthew. What's up, Julian?
Yeah, hey, hi, from Germany. Good wish.
How's the weather in Germany these days?
It's very cold, actually. We have minus 10 degrees. So, yeah, it's really cold, like for Germany.
Wait, minus 10 Celsius? That's
Yeah.
probably just about as cold as, well, what is that? Probably like 2 Fahrenheit? I'm just going to guess.
I don't know.
Someone look it up.
You have to use the metric system, really.
It's 14, Justin. 14
degrees. So okay, so it's not really, really cold. It's just cold.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Welcome, Julian. Kevin, how's it going?
Hey, it's good. The weather here is not as cold. It's nice and sunny.
Yeah, Chicago's been all right lately. It's been really, really nice. And then last but not least, the man from Denver.
Hey there. Well, I'm living now in Centennial, so it's not technically Denver, but it's equally sunny, so that's fine.
Did you say San Antonio?
Centennial.
Oh, Centennial. Where's Centennial? Where's Centennial?
Is that by Denver?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes away from the media.
Okay. I didn't know if like Centennial was like 100 years in the past or the future. That's what I was really hoping. All right, so let's go through demos. Matthew, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I can do that. I've been working on error messaging in DoneJS applications. Make sure I turn my notifications off, because I'm a very popular person and people keep messaging me all the time. All right, let's see. All right, so I have this app called Break DoneJS, and I've been using this to just try to break DoneJS as many ways as possible, so I can just kind of figure out where our error messaging is not so great and how we can improve that. So I spent like a couple days last week just kind of understanding our error messages and trying to, understand how everything works internally. And I knew that a lot of our error messages were not the best, for sure. But I'd always been able to just kind of ignore the noise and kind of see the good parts, if you will. That makes sense. So like here's how error messages were previously. This is not a great error message. This is saying that this other module could not be loaded. So I would just kind of look at this part and ignore everything else. And that was okay for me, but I can understand now when I take a closer look at it, I kind of understand much better why this is not that useful. I mean, first it says that there's an error loading this other module, which is fine, that's good. But then it also says there's an error loading other from done auto render. Index.stash done auto render. And people had told me a lot of times in the past, people had said, well, it says that there's an error in my index.stash, but there's not a problem in my index.stash. And I'd be like, oh yeah, just ignore that. It's saying that other couldn't be loaded. That's the real error. So then I realized, I actually looked in the code, and it's like every time there's an error that Steel is able to catch, it always adds this line. And this is basically saying that this particular module failed, and it's inside of this, which is kind of your main module. If you're doing like a progressive loading, it might say whatever home.component or whatever your progressive loaded module is. But it's kind of information where it is somewhat useful, but it's mostly noise. So anyways, that's just a long way of saying that I've really taken a closer look at each part of our errors and tried to clean that up. So I just got rid of that. We don't do that anymore. I don't think it's very useful. So I focused on four messages, and let me show that off. Yeah, this is my project that I use to try to break DoneJS. So I have just a basic DoneJS project. I'm just going to import a module that doesn't exist. This is not a real module. I'm going to try to import that and just refresh my page. And yeah, now we get a much better error message. It says 404 not found. You used to just say not found. I thought it would be better to say 404. It says obviously what the file, that the URL that we're trying to load. Then it gives a little information about what happened and a link to an error message page, and it takes you right to this section. And this goes over a couple of reasons why you might have run into the problem. It might be that there was a typo. It could be that this is third-party dependency and you didn't add this to your dependencies list. That's another possibility, even though we have a more specific error message in that case. And then lastly, it shows a little, well, not lastly, it shows a little code block. So it actually shows the import where we try to do this. And so if like this was a typo or something, you'd be able to easily see what the problem is and hopefully fix that easily. And then lastly, down here, it'll actually, this is the stack trace part. This is all the error message, and this is the stack. And I updated the stack to just show this line. So if you click this, it'll take you directly here, and you can kind of see the same thing that you saw in line. So that's cool. So I got that to work. That was awesome. It also works with inside of all stash, because stash is not JavaScript. So but when I first did the change, it would show the change in stash files, but it would show what stash files get translated to. They get translated to JavaScript. So even though that's almost enough, it would be, I thought it'd be even cooler if this worked too. And so I made it so that in Done Auto Render, it shows a particular line and it tells you it's on index.stash line 9, and you get the same error message. So same thing for any stash file, not just the auto render one. Same thing for components. Can import from exist. And so now 404s are way better than they used to be. Uh-oh, we got 2 on this one. Might have to investigate that. I don't know why we get 2. Let's try that again. Well, finding bugs right now. Yeah, I don't know why we get the error message twice, but we do get the right line. So there's that. So that's what I worked on this week. I do want to talk about, we still get these 2 404 errors, and then in the topics I want to talk about this a little bit and what we can do about this and if we should do anything about it. But yeah, that's my demo.
Awesome. Yeah, two warnings is better than 0.
That's true.
So moving in the right direction.
I think it's a done component problem.
You got to pull it back a little bit, but you're moving the right way. Awesome. Julian, anything to share with us? No, but thanks for coming, Kevin.
Yeah, I will share some stuff. So this last couple of weeks, I've been working on finishing up the forms guide. So if you go into guides now, you can see this forms guide on CanJS.com. I think I showed this off at the last contributor meeting. I'm not sure, but what I've been working on recently is these extended examples section down at the bottom. So this first example is this data down actions up pattern with multiple components. So I talk about data down actions up at the beginning in the binding section, but this is actually a more kind of realistic, real world example. If you're actually going to use this pattern, this is probably the way that you would want to do it. So the way that this works is this is building out this pizza ingredient selecting component. And the way that this works is there's this top level pizza form component that has an update ingredients function that is the one place that's going to change the state in the entire application. So what it does is it takes that and it passes it down to its children. So the pizza form has this select one component for selecting your cheese. It's got another component called meat picker for selecting what meat you want to use. And then it's got a select menu for selecting vegetables. And it passes this update ingredients function to each of those children. And the meat picker has another another select mini inside of it, and it does the same thing. So it passes the update function. It gets passed down to its children. So we're passing this one function throughout. And then each of those use that function to basically pass their actions back up to the parent. What am I looking at? So if we take a look at this update ingredients function, this is basically what's going to handle all of the actions for whatever type, either meat or cheese or whatever, and what action you want to do, like an add or remove, clearing of these lists. So this is kind of showing you how you can have a single place in your entire application that does all of this state management, all this, all of your changing of state. Cool. The other example that I've been working on is this example called working with related data. This is basically going to show a few different, having a few different models. This is our old make, model, year example, where you can select a make and it loads the model. So you can select the model and then it shows the years for that model. You select the year. And then if you change any of these, their children get reset. So if like you change the make, then your model gets set back to default, etc. So this is going to show you how to work with promises inside of forms, how to have kind of this hierarchical parent-child relationship between the make and model models. So like the things that are actually getting the data from the server. So that's what I'm working on now, is writing out this explanation. But this is all working. This should be up on the site soon.
Awesome. Using value?
Yeah, that's the other thing, is I rewrote this to use the
value definitions.
So for the year, it's using a value so that if the model changes, it resets the years, and then the model is also using value so that it is set based on the model, and also if the make changes, it resets itself.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. And you're tying it to it's two-way bound to the select using, it's just like an empty value you're using to pick the, empty value.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sometimes I would use null, but it's tricky if you want to make it also connect to can route. So yeah. Anyways, very cool. It made me think about the next, Kevin came to the last DoneJS community meeting in Chicago, DoneJS Chicago, and I think it's now even more confirmed that what we should do for the next app is make people build an app that they can then order their food with, and that's how they get their food.
Yeah,
they can make their pizza, and then when they've done it, they can hit submit, and it'll order their pizza for them. It'd be fun, because then they don't eat if they don't finish it. It makes them work hard.
Have to have a pretty long meetup, I think. But
yeah, that's true. Or people are going to have to program real fast.
That's true.
Cool. Good work, Manuel.
Hey, let me share my screen. Share screen here. Hopefully you can see my console now. The phone is big enough. So what I've been working in this last sprint was on improving some of the features we have in the DoneJS CLI. So the first thing that I want to show, and I want your attention down here, is that we had this DoneJS add app command to create new applications. And the way that it works is that after installing some of its dependencies, like the generator down here, then it will just prompt some questions for the user with some sensible defaults. But you'll still have to type in the questions, or in the case, for example, of the homepage URL, or just select the default if applies. So the first thing that I did was we added in the same vein as npm init command, we added a flag, yes flag. So it just uses the defaults and avoid the prompts. And I ran the same command in here, DoneJS add app, and the application name with the flag. And you can see that after the generator has been installed, it goes through writing the files in and skips all the prompts. So let me actually open this. And let's take a look at the package JSON. And similar to what npm does, we just use some sensible defaults in here. The same default we will use when we actually prompt the questions. And we'll get some information from the Git metadata. The next thing that I did, and this is related to, let me show the guide really quick here. So we have in the DoneJS webpage, we have some guides. And there is one where you get to build place my order, and it goes deep as setting up the Travis CI and how to set up also automatic deployments. So previously, we had a bunch of steps that you have to go through, like manually copying code and creating new files and stuff like that. And we saw there an opportunity to improve, like adding generators, and I'll show you some of those. The first one is DoneJS add Travis. And what this does is it will prompt some questions. It will get some defaults from my data. And what it basically does is it first, given that we know your username and the application name, it updates the package JSON repository so it has the correct place where your code lives. And it also creates a Travis YML file, which is the configuration file that Travis needs to know how to run the test when you push new stuff. And finally, it also modifies the README markdown file. And what it does is, let me show you the diff. And what it does, well, this is the repository that I said. It changed the default one we had for one that it uses your GitHub username and the repository. And then I think down here, let me accept the changes.
I didn't know you could do D like that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Let me accept the changes here. And then it also shows you an opportunity to see the changes to the README markdown. So let's inspect the diff too. And what it does to the README file is it adds a batch here. This is basically one batch that says if your build is failing or not. And let me accept these changes. If we go to the editor right here, and let me refresh this, we'll have the Travis YML, which is a very basic Travis YML. It's just set up so Firefox can run your tests. So the other generator we worked on was DoneJS add Heroku. And this basically does the same thing. It just adds the configuration files you need for Heroku. The first thing it does is you need to be logged in because the generator will create the app for you. So let me try to do this quick here. And come, and then I think this is, oops. And once you are logged in, it then asks if you want to use a random application name for Heroku. I would recommend to use random names because otherwise, if you provide one, you have to be unique. So I'll just use a random name in here. And this makes sense when you're following the guide. It asks if you need a proxy for Heroku. And I'll say no here. And then what it did next was it just created a new application, Heroku, and created a proc file that Heroku needs, and then gives you some instructions about what to do next in order to deploy your application to Heroku for the first time. And we created 2 more generators that allows us to deploy to use Travis CI, which run your test, to deploy to Heroku so you don't have to do it manually. And one of those is DoneJS add Travis deploy to Heroku. And this one will go through some questions too, because it needs to figure out some information about your repository. But see, we have actually defaults because we know this data already. And see how it actually games the Heroku application name. This is the one we just created, and I think I can just go back here quick and see this is the same name. So you just have to click enter. That's my auth token, my Heroku authentication token. Probably should change that. And of course, this error is because what we do is we try to encrypt the token. We encrypt the token for you, so it's added to the Travis YML. And since I'm using a repository that is actually not, I haven't created it, that's why it fails. But it should encrypt the token and add it to your Travis YML. And I think I leave it there. The other generator is deployed to Firebase, and it mostly works the same. It also encrypts the Heroku, the Firebase TI token, and that should make it like a lot easier to get your DoneJS app deployed automatically. And that's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's cool. Like, because if you think about it, like you got to add Travis, and then you got to add Heroku, and then you got to add Firebase, and then you have to set up all the handshakes between those things so that they can work with each other. And we have generators for all of that now. So it just shows how easy it is to get an application started with DoneJS.
By the way, I guess we haven't since the last community meeting. DoneJS 2 is out. It's on the NPMs. So npm install g DoneJS at 2 will get you DoneJS 2, and it has all this stuff. Just have to release the article.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So for mine, I pretty much gave my demo yesterday for an hour, and then the day before for another 2 hours. It is the text editor guide. That's all I'm really going to talk about. Just go check this out. Watch the video if you haven't, if you want to learn how to make a text editor with CanJS 4. The other thing that I'm working on is CanQuery, which is a replacement for CanSet. I already talked about this with a bunch of the other contributors, but to go over it real quick, the general idea, one of the pitfalls of CanSet was it was hard to introduce your own types and how they do comparisons. So CanQuery is going to come with a few types, and you can make them pretty easy. So if I want to have an enum, like a color type that was either red, green, and blue, I can create that type, and then I can kind of create subsets of like kind of this is considered the universal set. So I could say I have red and green and I have blue, and I want to do a union of red and green and blue, and then I get the universal set back. So the idea is you'll do queries with these data types, and it can compare them and do unions and things like that for the performance that CanSet currently provides, those kind of optimizations, and for real time. And this is kind of the low-level infrastructure for how it's going to work. I don't really want to go into it too much more in detail than that, but it is coming along. Hopefully by in 2 weeks from now, I will have a really like a good working demo of all of this, hopefully showing real-time integrated with CanConnect. So let's move on to topics. Let's see who got first here. It was Kevin. Kevin, do you want to start with your topic?
I kind of cheated, but yeah, so I edited my post after. But we can talk about mine first.
Sure.
So yeah, what I want to talk about is what can we do to speed up demos on CanJS.com. Here I'll share. So like I've talked about a few times, this forms guide is what I've been working on, and there's a ton of demos. There's like 30 different demos on this guide, which is good. I think it makes it a lot more helpful. But the problem is it makes loading CanJS.com a lot slower than it could be. And if you load it, you can see a problem. You can see this is loading Steel about 30 times, and then Steel's NPM plugin about 30 times in a row, and then CanJS's package.json 30 times in a row. Then we added this dev bundle, which speeds it up a lot, but it has to load that one time for each demo. All of these things get loaded once per demo.
Are these in iframes?
Yeah, and they're all in iframes. So I don't have a solution, but I wanted to talk about throw it out and see if you guys have ideas. What can we do? The one thing that I asked about the other day is like, can we somehow bundle all of? So if you were making a production build, you would bundle Steel into your script. So you'd have one script with Steel and with the npm plugin, and you just have to load one script instead of this loads like 8 or 9 per iframe. But how can we do that with this dev build that doesn't have a build for each of these demos?
Couldn't we have both? I mean, couldn't we just have a build an app that is just CanJS and its core, and then just point at loading that in production? But Matthew, can you have one of those anonymous like script tags that does imports that works against a production?
Yeah.
load?
So that was my original question is like, can we create a build where the main is empty?
Why can't it have a main of just CanJS and does nothing? I mean, what do I mean by empty? Just the imports.
At empty. Main equals the way that these work.
Why do that? Why not just like main is CanJS?
I don't know. Does that work? Would you still be able to use ES6 inside of that script?
That's what I was. I mean, there's no reason that.
Or use not ES6. Use imports. Use like requires inside of that.
I feel like we should be able to just do, source equals steel.production, or we could even do the I don't think we can do the slim loader version of this, but main equals can, which it would load the built can version, and then as long as you're sticking to imports of like can component, would this work? Just because it's production, I don't know why this wouldn't work.
Yeah, that should work. Okay. Well, first step would be, does it need to be in an iframe? Can we get rid of the iframes? Then it's only loading one version of Steel.
Yes, if we do what I'm trying to do, it's possible. But right now,
I think the reason it's in iframes, well, I don't know. One of the reasons it's in iframes is like conflicts, right? All of the demos on this page, none of them could use the same component name or whatever, which is fine. We could figure that out, but we probably cause some problems by doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
We could make it, we could be sneaky. I mean, we could somehow we could create a tag that would launch an iframe, like an empty iframe, but then pass it Steel, and like go look, and Steel could go looking for script tags within, like, I don't know. There's some way we could do like an iframe and then like have it load the code, but run all of that in an iframe, but use the Steel of the parent to be doing everything.
But then you still run into the same problem that Kevin was talking about. There's a shared registry of components. There's just one instance of can component. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
To me, I'd rather just don't have conflicts. have one.
One other thing we could do is just load all of them serially, which I think would help the user experience at least. Do it so that whatever the person's viewing, we're going to load that first, that demo, those demos that they're in the viewport, and then start loading them outside of the viewport after.
That would be huge.
That would definitely help. Yeah.
How
would you do that?
Service worker?
That would be another way. A service worker that caches.
Yeah, that was the other thing. Because then we could get offline maybe for free. Not for free.
Yeah, I don't know about service workers, but definitely you want to prioritize. Since they're in iframes, it's kind of can't do that because iframes are just their own little sandbox. I think you have to have a common Steel as the first step, and that probably makes it way better.
A common what?
A common Steel, just one Steel.
Oh, but service workers would do the same though. You just be re-executing everything. But you could solve it with service workers, I'd imagine.
Well, yeah. How would you do prioritization with service workers?
What do you mean? Why do prioritization? I mean, you would just see like multiple requests.
You're talking about,
huh?
The viewport.
Yeah, I think
you're talking about.
Oh, well, that's not in service worker. Sorry, I was thinking about. Sorry, I'm gonna go back so you can all see my face. I was talking about making it so just service workers, when the request comes for steel, it's making those 10 different requests for steel, a request for steel for every single one. It's just we're going to trap that with the service worker, fetch steel once, and then return all of those other requests. Here's your file. So
is that happening anyway? So it's going through the browser cache instead of.
It should be, but it looked like it wasn't.
It's not. It's not. They're all. I mean, none of them are. They're all 200s.
So our
maybe
header
that's
stuff are wrong.
Yeah,
too.
that's step one is fix our e tags.
Yeah, that is probably step one. That's the easiest thing. Just make the e tags like make it go for 1 minute.
Let me check. Let me make sure this isn't because that tool's on open and no caching. It could just be my browser settings.
So to me, step one is make sure caching is correct, and then I think having prioritization would make it. Who cares how long it takes, as long as they load in order.
There is one caveat with prioritization, though, is it's nice when you reload the page that you go back to the content that you were at.
Yeah, that'd be the viewport item, right?
But the problem is if the demos will all like take up a certain amount of height, which changes with how big the content is or whatever. Like you could definitely, if you weren't careful with it, or maybe even if you were relatively careful, it'd be easy to like, oh, you're at the bottom of the page, you reload, but because it thinks all the iframes are now only like 100 pixels high, like you're not going to be scrolled at the right spot. So you'd want to make sure that that was fixed with prioritization.
Yes. We could just make sure the iframes are the correct height as well.
Which I think they are.
But they can change, right? They eventually are, but not in the beginning. Yeah, they can change.
Well, they are if you set their height to the correct height.
But we make it so they're dynamic.
Let's make it not be dynamic. I mean,
then that creates a whole bunch of other problems.
Well, it's setting the height. I mean, someone can say this is.
Yeah, but there's some of our demos like you can keep adding rows. I don't know, like and then they're supposed to grow, or like you show something. Yeah, that's why it's dynamic. It's like some of them do. I mean, I've created demos that do that, and that's partially why it is dynamic. So it's like no matter if we don't want to create like vertical scroll bars unnecessarily. Vertical scroll bars within vertical scroll bars. Gag.
Yeah, but page, like especially in mobile, the mobile doesn't matter as much, but page jumping and stuff is terrible.
No, it is. I agree. So yeah, I'm just pointing that out. That's like something that has to be kind of. Anyway, I think we've come up with some ideas.
Yeah. So if we wanted to do prioritization, how would we do that?
Well, you could always just like just keep in local storage or something like whenever anybody scrolls, just keep their last position for that page, and then if they reload, always try to scroll them there. I don't know. I've never spent that much time trying to figure out a really good solution for how to maintain scroll position on reload.
The browser does that for you.
It does, but what if it only does it under certain circumstances, right? Like if your page starts changing like after a certain point, then it doesn't anymore. It's weird stuff. I've never had to like fully come to terms. Like I don't fully comprehend what the rules are for browsers.
I think it's a heuristic. I don't think it's a.
Yeah. Is there another event listener new on Chrome? Maybe that fires an event if some content comes into a viewport. I read about something like that. There's a new event listener or.
Scroll thing, yeah.
There you go. Let's move. We'll figure this out. Yeah, I think we've got some ideas. Any other topics people want to talk about?
I have a pretty quick one.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it's about error messaging again. Yeah, error messaging. So you got a pretty good error message here. We also get these 404s. and I just want to explain what these are. You get two 404s. These are from the browser. These are not stuff that we log. And these come from, it tries to fetch this URL. This URL returns a 404. It puts this here. And then you get a second one for /index.js, and that one exists because the NPM algorithm is to check for a /index.js, just how NPM or node modules algorithm works. So you get both of those. So in the case, sometimes this second one will actually work, right? Because that's why we try this is because sometimes it does work. In which case you still get this 404, which you don't really want. And even in this case where we log a good error message, you definitely don't want this one because this one didn't exist. You might not even want this one because we have a better error message anyways. So what my question is, should we try to suppress these in some way? I guess that's the first question. Should we try? Or should we just say, nah?
Well, I think I'm not bothered at all by the two when there is an error. That one that doesn't bother me. What I think the bigger problem is there wasn't an error. It wasn't index.js, and we're showing an error. So if we could suppress that,
well, we
sure,
can't.
that'd be great. But
we can't know in advance if there's going to be an error, so we either have to always suppress them or never suppress them.
Yeah, but we could suppress them and then later replay them, I'd imagine.
Kind of. Okay, so let's talk about that then. So you can't actually suppress as far as I can tell, you can't suppress these using any technique that I can think of, which is mostly just wrapping console error. That doesn't work. These don't go through console error. So I don't know how the browser does this, if it's interceptable in any way. I can't. If anyone can think of another method, let me know. But I can't think of one. So on the client side, I don't think these can be fixed.
Yeah,
however,
service worker maybe.
With a service, yeah, possibly with a service worker. That's true. But a simpler, more direct solution for DoneJS users would be the DoneJS server could fix this. There's a sneaky way that someone suggested a while back. There's a status code 204, which is no content, and we could use that instead of a 404. Only for these kind of like steal requests, not for anything else, but only for these steal requests, is to send back a 204 instead, in which case the browser, that's a 200 error or 200 message, so that's okay. But then steal would know that a 204 is actually equivalent to a 404, and then we would just not see anything there. So that's a possible solution. So I don't know where else I'm going with this, but do people like that idea of trying to get rid of those?
I vote to suppress them all the time if we have that better one.
Right.
But we can't suppress them.
We can suppress
or send a 204, the same thing. That error would not show up there.
I don't know how I feel. I mean, 200 is still a successful response. I mean, it's kind of, there's like a, I don't know.
It's a workaround.
Yeah.
Like I said, that I would make it only happen for the steal. Like when we make the steal Ajax request, I would send a header that's like, hey, this is a steal thing. It's kind of like, it's like when Node does its algorithm.
That you could practically just, the server could just be like, oh, well, here's your file. I'm just going to look at, there's an index.js and give it to you. I mean, you could just always return success or an actual 404 if you're going to go down that road.
You could, yeah. I mean, that's definitely true, but then you're getting weird like the paths aren't actual paths, which is weird. You're getting different results depending on if you use a regular HTTP server and a DoneJS server.
It's a good question.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna say that people do want to suppress it, and I might just do it.
Okay. I would. Okay. I don't know how like important this one is though.
No, I agree. It's not as important as the better error messages.
Cool. All right. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? And I get to talk about what I want to talk about. All right. I want to talk about CanJS's homepage a little bit. Because it sucks and it's mostly my fault, or like almost entirely my fault. So, you know, I was at a meetup with Kevin, and someone's asking me like, "Oh, why should you use CanJS against all the other frameworks?" And we have a article that we should publish that kind of more directly compares. But like even outside of like the direct comparison, I don't know. I mean, I think that the innovation, stability, the longevity argument, I don't think it's landing the way that at least I had hoped. So I want to change that. So I was trying to explain to him why to use it, and my thoughts were mostly centered around like, CanJS is in some ways a jack of all trades. Like it makes doing the common things pretty easy, and then it makes it so either it can get out of the way, or there's a lot of utilities that can help you do like weird stuff, right? Like integrating with other tools, making sure memory safety is there, doing real time. There's a whole bunch of things. So my thought is I want to change the kind of hero text to say that, and then I kind of want to take like a talk about quickly like the easy stuff, and then give a little example of how to get started, and you can open it to a JS bin, and then maybe like highlight, hey, go to the technical overview and blah 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 blah, that gets started, and then like a section about like the really difficult stuff that helps you with the things that like I mentioned, real time, how you can go from object-oriented kind of stuff to then do kind of streaming definitions, how it does memory safety, how we do longevity and make it so that it can upgrade over a long time. We take that really serious. And now all of the developer tools stuff. So thoughts on this?
What was the last section?
So this is me like writing yesterday. This is not final copy, but CanJS is a client-side JavaScript framework that makes it easy to do the common stuff while managing to do the impossible. Mm-hmm. It's about like how it can start small and easy and then grow, and it's there for you when it's not just one pattern. There's like 15 patterns that you can use CanJS to accomplish whatever you need to. So the two sections are kind of like the easy stuff, like just showing it can do the like little common things really easy. And then there would be a section of talking about all the difficult things it can do, probably linking into the technical highlights page. Kind of like, in some ways it's a little bit like DoneJS, where there's the, all of this stuff that it can do. That would be more of like the advanced part.
So maybe I'm the only person, but I don't get the pictures of the homepage. I don't get it. What's the rabbit and the tree about? Okay, the turtle and the lunch. I understand, but I don't understand the rabbit. So
do you know Aesop's fable of tortoise and the hare?
No.
Okay, that's why. Huh?
You're definitely not the only person that has that problem. Other people have said so.
Yeah, I've heard other people say that.
So, but I want to have more headers, so have greater topics. So the homepage isn't look very. So I want to have a big header that's explaining me what are the great features about CanJS. So first time I visit CanJS, so I see the turtle, I see the rabbit and the tree, and I don't understand what's going on there. What's the main feature, or what is this about? So if you go to Moment.js, you see the clock, you would know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to CanJS, you have not that feeling about what's that homepage about. You know what I mean?
Yes, I'm not saying that the tortoise and hare fits into the new messaging. I just left it up there because I was just playing around. Well, mostly because I was just changing the text, not drawing new images. So to me, it really comes down to like first you just figuring out what it is about, and then conveying that. So how do people feel about this, something like this, as the core message?
I don't know. Is that what CanJS is about? I thought CanJS was a collection of utilities.
But that's not about anything. That's not like a reason to use it. Yeah, a collection of utilities that serve what purpose? I'm a collection of carbon and hydrogen and oxygen atoms.
Yeah.
So what is the reason to use it that you're trying to convey? That's easy?
Well, then in some ways it's two things that I'm conveying. Yeah, it's easy to do like the stuff that you just want to kind of get done, like the stuff that you're doing all the time. But then it's not going to fall apart when you get to weird circumstances, like the text editor or integrating with the Google Maps or something like that. It can do all of those things. It's not just. I mean, it's more of like it's not. In some ways, I'm also just like. It's not just like a template library like React. It's far more pieces than that.
Yeah, I kind of like the tagline. The only feedback I would have is that it kind of sounds like CanJS is doing the impossible, and it'd be cooler if it helps you do the impossible, like you're the person doing the stuff, It's my only feedback.
Sure. The words here, I mean, matter, but more matters is just like what we're trying to accomplish.
This is like equivalent to like Ember.js's hero header is a framework for creating ambitious web applications. So that's we're talking about the equivalent for CanJS.
Well, it's not totally. We're not the same as that because we kind of stress this. So that's kind of what I want to talk about down here, which is like, you start with this familiar object-oriented approach. It looks like this, and then I want to talk about like, well, you can do this, but then there's this whole other like, 1,000 tools that are at your disposal for doing things like a model layer. Like most other frameworks don't even have a model layer, but we have a pretty substantive model layer that adds real-time behavior.
We have several model layers.
Yeah. What
about the observable pattern that CanJS have? I think it's a huge feature that CanJS has is the observable.
Yeah, that's what the technical overview is like. It is centered around object-oriented observables. But then even while that's true, a lot of our observables now can be derived with streams. I'm even fine with like, that's like, in some ways, that's what I'm trying to say is like this kind of simple, you have your properties and you mutate them with methods. Everybody gets that. But then it can expand from there. That's kind of the theme.
Okay, what kind of feedback are you looking for?
Oh, this is like one is like, does the message, is that something that like we feel like that can represent CanJS? Is really number one. That's all that really matters. Everything else is just kind of like secondary.
I think the managing to do the impossible thing, I think we could reframe that, because I don't know that everyone thinks they ever need to do the impossible. But I think what we're trying to say is like, it will give you options to solve whatever problem you end up needing to solve later, or it'll like stick with you as your application grows.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say, but not in such like a dry way.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah,
like an aspirational way, right? Like people want to make like awesome cutting edge applications. So that's like that. I was trying to say it aspirational, but yeah, no, you're right in that's the real message. Is just like there's a lot of tooling around the simple core of observables that you know, I don't know if Julian, you saw like this diagram. I felt like this kind of hit it home for me. Like, you know, CanJS's core thing is like, well, there's observables and everything just connects to them. That's the idea. Is like there's this observable core and everything else connects to it, but we've got like a million ways to connect to it and do things around our observable core.
I think it might be. I think that it's a little bit long. I might just say CanJS is a framework for doing the impossible. Cut out the common stuff part.
You don't want to say the easy. I think the easy part is. I think that's important.
Like looking at Angular's page, it says one framework, mobile and desktop. Boom, right there you get it. It's about the fact that it's a single code base for all apps. That's the theme. I don't know what the theme is here.
And that's kind of similar to ours.
Yeah.
You need to build high performance real time web and mobile applications. Yeah, it's that transition. I don't know. I don't want to just say like you could build like the impossible. I don't know. I think the easy part has a lot of value to me.
What is the common stuff?
Common stuff is like, you know, two-way bindings. It has the technology to support the update the DOM when state changes, read a value from an input element, kind of thing.
What about something like that CanJS do the hard stuff, and you can write and you can focus on the code that you write? So something like that the observable pattern is really the hard stuff that CanJS provide for you, and you can focus on other stuff that matters. Something like we do the hard stuff, and you can focus on your code or on your logic, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's good, except for I feel like, how does that separate ourselves from other frameworks? Because I would say that's like that all modern JavaScript frameworks, at least what they're trying to accomplish is like, okay, you focus on like your business rules and then the framework takes care of the rest. I mean, I just feel like, if I were to say that to like somebody like, oh, the reason is it allows you to just focus on what's important and the framework takes care of the rest, is that something that you feel like couldn't be said as easily about another framework? So that's in some ways why I went with this, is because I felt like it's a way to position ourselves. It's like CanJS does make it relatively with two-way bindings, and you know, you're not going to have to pull in like a Redux or some kind of other crazy architecture. It is kind of like Vue and kind of like Vue in that way. It's like easy to do the common stuff, but then it goes beyond like something like Vue and even React, and it has like all these other million ways to do things. And I don't really know of another. I mean, maybe Ember, but Ember is so convention over configuration that like has to consume your whole world, right? And like if you just look at like React, well, that's just a template. So sure, it makes it easy to do the common stuff, but then like it gives you nothing in terms of like larger tools, like even like can control is still really valuable, or a model layer. Or you got to use somebody else's routing stuff. So I just felt like this also is.
So what about be more aggressive and say, so we are we are better than Redux and Angular. We provide all you need in one. Be aggressive and say.
I don't think you should call out other. I mean, the purpose of it should be exist outside of other frameworks. But yes, in your head, you should be thinking about that. But I don't think it should be like in the actual hero text. Like, we should have a spirit that's all our own, but it's wise to frame it knowing the strengths and weaknesses of other frameworks. If that makes sense. Anyways, I feel like we've talked about this. Thanks everybody for your input. If you have ideas and like things like, you know, come up with hero text on your own, please send that to me. This was just jotted down at this point. To be honest, my goal is to just make something that's better than what's up there right now, and we can keep debating it forever. All right, anything else? All right, thanks everybody. That is a wrap.